Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this latest teaching session on the course on technology and the future of medicine. Today we're honored to have Dr. Shawna Pandya talking to us about entrepreneurship in medicine. Now you might imagine that any of the presentations in this course could be life-changing, depending upon what your life is like, but this is maybe just a little bit more likely to be life-changing than the others. Is great practical value. And it's not only this lecture today, but a really awesome experience of a workshop a week from today that I think you will enjoy very, very much. 3 years ago, Shawna and I were at the Singularity University Executive Program, and it just seems amazing that 3 years has gone by, but here we are. So, she is now a resident in neurosurgery and done all sorts of other awesome things that she'll tell you about. So, Shawna, take it away.
Thank you so much, Kim. So, life-changing presentation, no pressure or anything. I've never had my presentation called that before, so hopefully I can deliver even a fragment of that. But before I get going, I want to start with a question. Has anyone ever just woken up and thought to themselves, what a time to be alive? At least one person, 2 people, 3 people, excellent. It's true. And I want to start by capping off the previous week in science. Now, there's this website called I Freaking Love Science. I might have euphemized that second word there, that second F. But in the past week alone, the amount of advancements we have made as the human race, scientists have announced that they have grown new teeth with complete roots using only adult human gum tissue. NASA's rover on Mars identified clay containing many chemicals required for life in the first drilled sample, signaling that the planet once had a wet and hospitable environment. Physicists at CERN confirmed that the particle discovered last July in their LHC, their Large Hadron Collider, is in fact indeed the Higgs boson particle. A new study found that 14 adults have been functionally cured of HIV. When I was a kid, even when I started medical school, HIV was a life sentence, or at best a chronic disease. Functionally cured. It's pretty amazing to be alive. So, the talk today is called Engineering Tomorrow, Fostering a Culture of Disruption and Innovation. And this has evolved from previous talks on entrepreneurship in medicine. But more today, what we're going to focus on is big ideas and how we generate them and how we get there. But in case you want to check out early, in case you may want to go for a bike ride in your mind for the next hour and 20 minutes, I'll give you the Coles Note summary here so you won't be in suspense. 2 things I want you to take away from today. 1, the world is amazing, and I hope that's the sense that you'll come out of this lecture with today. Number 2, there's potential in everyone and every single thing, okay? Now, to reiterate this point, to drive it home, I want to show you the banana piano, okay? So, I'm just going to go to that website, and I'm going to show you that video to, in fact, reiterate that there is potential in everything and everyone. So what I'm about to show you is a company, it's called Makey Makey. Can everyone see okay? Your banana can be a space bar. Play-Doh can be your joystick. Adding some new life into the classic version of Mario. Your pencil can be your game controller. Now, we won't go through the entire video, but my favorite is coming up. And water buckets can be Dance Dance Revolution. It's a little bit wet, it's a little bit muddy, but sure is a lot of fun. Okay. So this is a lead-in to our lecture today because, like I said, there's potential in everyone and everything. But more than that, all it takes is a little spark of idea and someone saying, what if? And all of a sudden, things are turned upside their head. Because frankly, I always thought bananas were for eating and replenishing one's potassium, not for playing the piano. Okay? So this company is called Makey Makey. You can Google it if you want later. But the bottom line is 2 students from MIT Media Design Lab said, what if you could plug in inputs from everyday objects into your computer and you could program your computer to think that your banana was your space bar? Okay, so this talk is delineated into 2 parts. First of all, we're going to talk about engineering tomorrow and big ideas. And then we're going to talk a little bit about bringing it closer to home and how we would actually go about fostering innovation in disruptive cultures and lessons learned. So, before we get underway though, we should probably start with some introductions. So, go ahead. I always like to know who I'm talking to. So we'll start in the front row, over here in the far side, and then we'll go from there. So your name, what you're studying, why you're here. Brief intro, 5 seconds maybe.
Okay, so my name is Dorian Fenton. I'm a commerce student. I'm here because I thought the course was interesting, it looked different, and I don't know, I figured I would take it.
I'm Matt Herman. I'm a neuro undergrad, and I'm here because, well, like you said, it's a cool course, cool idea.
That's what all the cool kids are doing.
Kind of more of the same. I'm Vanessa, also a neuro undergrad, and the course sounded amazing, so why not take it?
Hi, I'm Nicholas Lee, and I'm in general science as well. I just figured this would be a pretty cool course about the singularity and stuff, and it'd be good to get educated on anything that's going to happen.
I'm Damon. I'm in just general biosci, and yeah, this course, I'd never heard of anything like it, so I thought I'd try something different.
I'm Diane, and I'm a grad student in communications and technology, and I was a lab tech in a previous life, and now I'm a technical writer.
I'm Peter Wood. I'm doing my MSc in cardiac medicine, and I took this course because my thesis is in development of cardiac technology.
Hi, I'm Saurav Vasistha. I'm doing my PhD in systems biology in Department of Medicine with Dr. Gordon Broderick.
I'm Yahya Ftih. I'm doing master's in pediatrics department. I'm interested in technology and especially medicine-related technologies. So
my name is Jason Kolinkowski. I'm here because I got asked to come by and see the stuff that is being said, much similar to what I've been talking about. Thanks.
I'm Tyler Koschuk. I'm a master's student in laboratory medicine and pathology. I'm here because I'm interested in advancements in medical technology.
Hello, I'm Adam Mildenberger. I'm in my first year of medicine, and I received an email from the med server list. So.
Hi, I'm Ying. I'm a PhD student in pathology and lab medicine. I choose this class because I'm interested in future medicine.
Hi, my name is Mandana. I'm a PhD student in gastroenterology. I found this cool idea to just raise up my head from the bench work and think about the future.
Hi, my name is Jen. I'm a PhD student from Department of Medicine, studying liver autoimmune disease. I'm taking this course because the topic was very attractive.
Fantastic. So I always like to know who I'm talking to, and I love it that there's so much diversity in the room. We have people in undergrad, master's level, PhD, fellowship. We have people in medicine, commerce, neuro, everything and anything in between. So hopefully there's a little bit of something in here for everyone. If not, you can write me a letter of complaint afterwards. I'll give you my email address. Okay? So fair is fair. Now I have to introduce myself. Okay? So who am I and why the heck am I talking to you? My name is Shawna Pandya. As Kim was saying, I am a first-year neurosurgery resident here at the University of Alberta. Why am I qualified to talk to you about big ideas? Well, I've had a variety of interesting life experiences. I won't go into too much detail because I think more of it will come out through the course of this talk. But to summarize, I've worked with the European Astronaut Center, Crew Medical Support Office, NASA Johnson Space Center, went to the International Space University to marry my passions in medicine and space. Took some time off, so that was the first time I took a time off from med school. Really liked it, and then decided I wanted to do it again, so I took some more time off to move down to Silicon Valley in answer to a challenge to positively impact 1 billion people in 10 years using accelerating technologies, and that was at Singularity University at NASA Ames. I'm currently a TED-Med Frontline Scholar for this year, 2013, so I'll be at TED-Med in DC this April. And I think that's the Coles Note summary. So moving on, let's talk about engineering tomorrow in big ideas. So you'll notice I like to be really interactive. I ask a lot of questions. So question number 2, what is this? Anyone? It's not a trick question, I promise. Just yell it out. It's a road, yes, okay. So this kind of goes back to my first question. Has anyone ever just gone outside and marveled at a road? Anyone? If you haven't, I hope you will after this lecture, because I think it's phenomenal that one person, Henry Ford, with a single idea can have physically transformed the entire geography, the entire landscape of an entire planet. Because wherever you go, from Canada to the USA, to Argentina, to Chile, to Brazil, to Haiti, to India, to Nepal, there are roads all across the planet. But the key thing to note is that Henry Ford did not invent the automobile. The first prototypes of cars and automobiles date as far back as the 1600s. Sure, they were steam-powered then, and they don't really look like what we see on the road today, but it wasn't a novel idea. Instead, his key insight was to say, hey, what if everyone had cars? And he mass-produced the Ford Model T. And in so doing, he empowered more citizens to have access to cars, and in having all these people putting all these cars on the road, arose the need for roads across the globe. Same thing. Thomas Edison. We would not be sitting here in this room today. We would not be able to have a society that runs 24/7 as it does without the light bulb. Yet we take it for granted, and it is such an innocuous part of our surroundings and background that we don't even think to admire it, to say thank you to it, to be amazed that our life is what it is because we have the light bulb. And again, the key insight that Edison had wasn't to invent a light bulb. Many, many before him had tried the same thing with limited success. They didn't have the right filament. They didn't think to use tungsten. They didn't have the right design. What Edison had that others didn't was sheer bloody-mindedness and perseverance. And he tried again and again and again. He certainly didn't get right on the first try. It's the same thing with the airplane. You certainly don't see us flying around across the Atlantic, across the Pacific in for the first models of the airplane. It would be a little bit chilly and a little bit unsafe, I suspect, if we hadn't evolved the airplane. My key point is this, is that innovation happened through someone building on the ideas of others. Now, taking it a little bit more close to home, because this is a course on technology and the future of medicine, you look at key insights that people had that changed the way we run our wards, changed the way that our patient outcomes work, that decreased mortality. They were as simple as someone saying, hey, how do I make this better? What can I do to decrease problem X? Someone said, hey, I noticed that babies seem to die less when I wash my hands when delivering a baby. Maybe we should ask everyone to wash their hands. Others said, you know, I noticed that in my lab that bacteria grows everywhere except where this penicillin mold seems to grow. What if penicillin could kill harmful organisms? Even in my own field, surgery, surgeons get a lot of credit all the time, except we couldn't do what we do without the anesthetist. As recently as 150 years ago, surgery was a show sport in that hopefully you could amputate a patient's leg before they bled to death, and hopefully without too much pain, but you know, that was definitely not a guarantee as they were awake. Then along came anesthesia and the ability to put a patient under and induce controlled pain and controlled damage for a greater good. And my favorite, the smartphone, my brain outside my body that enables me to be more efficient, more effective, and effectively smarter in clinic, in the OR, by being able to access a world's wealth of knowledge at the tap of a button. Innovation is everywhere we look in this world. And these things, while they seem innocent today, were a huge deal at the time that they first came up, whether they were cars or the light bulbs or the internet. For those of us who have children who are growing up in today's generation, you know, for them having an iPad or a cell phone is part of everyday life. But I'm sure at least a good fraction of us in this room can remember going home and reading a book or watching TV because the internet didn't exist yet. But it all came with someone saying, what if, or why should this be impossible? And so I want to switch gears a little bit now and say we paid homage to the past, but let's pay homage to the future and let's look forward to what the upcoming trends and innovations are. So what is the most far out, crazy, disruptive fairy tale idea you can think of? If you have any, you can feel free to shout it out. Anyone? That's okay, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you that it's being done already today. So, has anyone heard the term 3D printing? Some of you. Okay, for those of you who don't know, 3D printing is essentially the ability to model any object on a computer and then put in the base materials into your printer and generate a 3D version of that object. And that's pretty cool, right? You can generate, you know, a little toy ball here. But what if you could take that ability further? You could manufacture art. And if you put in the right base materials, say cells, you could manufacture organs. You could manufacture a heart or a kidney, and suddenly donor lists across the world would shrink dramatically. You wouldn't have to worry about donor matches or donor supplies because you would be able to generate organs at a moment's notice. This research is underway today. What if you could print houses? What if you could put in the base materials, put in concrete or adobe or whatever is local to wherever you happen to live, and for 70% less costs, less waste, and in 2 days' time, you could print a house. The company Akasa is already on it. Now, they're only limited to 6-foot walls. They have a little bit of research to do, but the point is they said, what if? Here's technology X, here's problem Y. How can we marry the two together? And emerging technologies are getting better every single day because someone said, okay, technology exists. How do I make it better? So last night when I was revamping this presentation, I came across the latest news from the Vienna Technical Institute. This is a cathedral in Vienna, except this version happens to be several hundred micrometers in size. So 3D printing has now reached the scale of micrometers. And by using the same principles, inputting base materials, putting in the model, they were able to generate a 3D model at the micrometer scale, barely visible to the human eye, probably need a microscope to see it, to generate a cathedral. So, I don't know about you, when I was little, I watched the Jetsons religiously and waited for the day that my flying car would be here. And if you type into Google, it's the year 20X, 2011, 2012, 2013, where's my flying car? For a long time, it would have led you to the realm of science fiction. Well, there was a group out of MIT that said, well, I'm sick of waiting. What if we had flying cars? And Terrafugia said, okay, why don't we do that? And they created what is known as an LSA, or essentially a lightweight aircraft that is both road ready and able to fly. And they said, this goes to the other lesson that we learned from Edison. With sheer perseverance, they faced technical hurdles, and more importantly, they faced policy hurdles, and doggedly worked with the FAA to get road clearance and to get aircraft clearance, or to get FAA clearance to be able to fly their craft. So it is now approved as a lightweight flying vehicle. So your flying car is here. Taking it back to medicine. For a long time, amputees, whether they were victims of trauma or victims or soldiers who had gone to war and lost a limb, had to deal with either a hook for a prosthesis or the cosmetically friendly plastic prosthesis that had no grip, no functionality, no degrees of freedom. Take a second. Look at your hands. Open them, close them, flex them, extend them, move your fingers. For those of you with a robotics background, we talk about something called degrees of freedom. And for those of you who've had practical robotics experience, you know it's notoriously hard to imitate the finesse of the human hand, the fingers, the dexterity, moving it around, getting tactile feedback, getting force feedback. But then someone said, what if? And said, why should we deal with the hook invented in the 1600s as the prosthesis? Why should we accept that? Or why should we have a cosmetically acceptable but non-functional prosthesis that allows one to have a hand that doesn't do anything? In the early 2000s, DARPA, the military research arm of the United States, issued a challenge because they realized that all their soldiers who had been injured in the line of war and sacrificed so much for their country weren't even had to deal with a prosthesis that was essentially non-functional. What you see here on the screen behind me is called the DARPA bionic arm, and it has almost as many degrees of freedom as the human hand. If you were to Google a demo of it, I didn't include a video here today, but you will see that the arm can flex, it can catch, it can feed, it can hold a spoon and take cereal from the soldier's mouth to his hand. And that's pretty amazing. So taking it one step further, we've talked about functional prostheses, but what about people who aren't missing a limb, who aren't necessarily amputees, but are paraplegic because of spinal cord injury? This is Berkeley Bionics, based in Berkeley, California. And again, they said this is a problem. We have the skills. We have increasing knowledge in robotics and haptics, in force feedback. And they created the exoskeleton. Now, it's a strap-on backpack, about 120 pounds. But when the user is wearing it, the weight is transferred. So they can actually allow a previously paraplegic person or a double amputee to walk again by allowing the patient to put their hands in crutches and then use the coordination of the exoskeleton to allow them to walk. Now, again, this is a pretty amazing demonstration. If you've ever seen it up close, it's something that really is awe-inspiring. Okay, so let's switch tracks for a second. How many of you are space buffs or have grown up watching science fiction or said, you know, okay, we've been to the moon, that was before my time, let's go somewhere already? Well, one person isn't waiting for it. He's a master's student out of the Netherlands, and he's created the Mars One project. If you go to www.mars-1.com, he is creating the first privately funded expedition to go to Mars. And his idea is to fund it through the world's greatest media blitz that the world has ever seen. And I don't know about you, but if someone were going to Mars, I'd be glued to my television or my smartphone these days. Switching gears again, I want to tell you about something called aerogel in the realm of material science. Now, it looks like this glowing piece of plasma on your screen, but what it is actually desiccated gel. So it started in 1931 when two scientists had a bet. And they said that, okay, well, gel is essentially infused with liquid. What if you could desiccate it through a process known as critical super drying and inject the place where the liquid used to be with air? You would end up with an extremely durable, extremely lightweight material. To prove my point, this is a 2-gram piece of aerogel. It is supporting a 2.5 kilogram brick. So why am I telling you all this? Do you remember what I told you at the beginning of this lecture? Anyone? What were the 2 take-homes I wanted you to take home with you? I'll remind you. The world is amazing. There's so much around you to inspire you, whether it's something that someone 100 years ago did, 200 years ago did, and said, what if? Or if it's stuff that's happening today. The last point I'm going to talk about in this segment of the talk is Virgin Galactic. Again, building on the ideas of others and saying, okay, well, impossible is nothing, nothing is impossible. Let's build a spacecraft. You know, let's have space tourists. Let's have people able to go to space, not just as a part of a governmental body or governmental space agency. We think it should happen. In the early 2000s, the X Prize organization out of California launched a challenge they essentially had a bet with their insurance company, and they said that we think we're going to challenge scientists and pilots and engineers to create a spacecraft that can go to low Earth orbit and successfully land, go to low Earth orbit twice in the space of a short time, and then come back down to Earth safely without killing anyone. And then we're going to take the winner, give them $10 million. And the insurance company said, well, NASA says it's impossible, so we'll take your bet. And we'll offer $10 million to anyone who can do it. In 2004, the X Prize was won. It was won by Virgin Galactic, which is part of the Virgin brand that spans the world from Virgin Megastores to Virgin Music. And what they did with their win is create this company that in the coming decade aims to take tourists to low Earth orbit and beyond. So why did I tell you this? The key take home is big ideas happen by building on the ideas of others, saying what if, saying hey, there's a car, why can't it be in the hands of everyone? Or people are trying to build light bulbs, let's pursue this idea because I really believe in it, and daring to dream and say what if. So are these fairy tale ideas from far-off labs? I want to assure you that this is not the case, and I'd like to tell you about my own experiences now. I don't want to dwell too much on this, so we might skip a little bit through, because I want to spend more time on you towards the end and talking about life lessons. Okay? So a little bit closer to home. We talked about robotics, we talked about haptics, we talked about degrees of freedom. So one of the things I did in early medical school, I heard about something called NeuroArm, and when I looked into that, it's like, oh, that sounds awfully like Canadarm. So I Googled it, and it was this robotic arm that does brain surgery based off Canadarm technologies. I was like, this is amazing. This is brain surgery, and this is robotics, and this is based off space technologies. This is everything I love. It's the Venn diagram. It's the perfect thing. And so I emailed the lab and asked if they could use a medical student for hapless labor, and they said, yeah, of course. And what's amazing is that there was a neurosurgeon who said, as surgeons, we can be incredibly barbaric. Humans, as careful as we try to be, still have fundamental flaws. We shake a little bit. We have tremors. Even the most careful neurosurgeon can operate at the level of millimeters rather than micrometers. So I said, what if we could do one better and get a robot to do our surgery? And he created NeuroArm. Again, this wasn't the first robot, surgical robot. There's the Da Vinci robot, nor was it the first neurosurgical robot. But he said, what if we could make it compatible with MR imaging and see where in the brain we were operating on during a surgery? And so he created this robot that could do brain surgery, that has nearly as many degrees of freedom as a human hand, that could work on micrometers rather than millimeters, and could filter out tremors. Another idea of tackling this idea of what if or far out possibilities, I'd like to tell you about my time spent at NASA Johnson Space Center. So there I worked on what we call XMC, or Exploration Medical Capability. And in the minds of many people, human spaceflight to far away destinations or long-term destinations is, stuff of science fiction or fairy tales. But I can assure you that there are people there saying, hey, this should be a possibility and we should explore it. So what I worked on was something called Habitat Demonstration Unit Near-Earth Asteroid Capability Simulation. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, we should go to an asteroid. Medical issues will probably come up. What will happen? What will we need? And how will we deal with it? And so what we did in the course of this mission was we simulated a 9-month mission to an asteroid, and we said, okay, well, things that could happen are a kidney stone, or a eye abrasion, or even appendicitis. What will we need? And then we ran those simulations. The last thing I wanted to tell you about in this whole realm of thinking big and big ideas is the company I co-founded called CivicArt. So this dates back to my time in Silicon Valley. So this was the first year that Singularity University was founded. And basically, the founder of the X Prize and the International Space University, Peter Diamandis, got together with other people that he thought were leaders and thinkers in the world. He called Larry Page and Sergey Brin from Google. He called together Ray Kurzweil, who has popularized the idea of the singularity, and he said, the world is full of technology and change and amazing ideas, and the world is full of amazing people. What if we put the latest ideas and technology in the hands of these people? What if we let them know about the most amazing trends and the most significant challenges that humanity faced? And what if we challenge them with an idea we call 10 to the 9 plus? Specifically, how would you challenge, or how would you use technology to positively impact 1 billion people in 10 years? One thing I've learned is that when you're with the right amount of people, with the right group of people and the right thinkers, the biggest challenge won't faze you or limit you. So I happened to work with a group of 9 people from 7 countries, and we took it one step further and said, how would you positively impact all the people, 7 billion people in 10 years? And so we took this challenge and said, on the one hand, disasters, and whether natural or man-made, affect anyone, anywhere, anytime. Whether you're talking about earthquakes in Haiti, or power outages in New York, or terrorist threats elsewhere. And the problem is that people need to, mass messaging today is slow, it's generic, and it's not actionable. At the same time, we noticed this amazing trend of smartphones. Now, it's 2009, they were just becoming popular. And we said they're becoming increasingly pervasive, increasingly powerful, and they're growing exponentially. By the year 2015, there's going to be 3.5 billion of these external brains in the hand of men, women, and children all across the globe. So how can we use that to tackle this problem of disaster response and saving lives and in bringing people to actionable actions, essentially, in the course of in the event of a crisis? So this goes back to what I said before. On the screen behind me, you'll see real-life examples of existing mass messaging systems, whether it's on the West Coast in California with an emergency alert that says, there's a blizzard. Okay, great, there's a blizzard. What do I do? Where do I go? What's affected? At the same time, some of you might remember in May of 2010, there was a terrorist threat in Times Square of New York. And the message that went on Twitter was, due to emergency response activity in the area, Broadway is closed between 44th and 46th Street. So what does that tell you? If I'm in the area, I want to know which areas to avoid. If I'm in the area already, I want to know how to get out of there safely. So we looked at the trends. We looked at social media. We looked at smartphones. We looked at increased connectivity. We looked at the trend of Twitter, which had 100,000 users in 2007 and has expanded to hundreds of millions of users today. Same thing with smartphones, less than 2 million in 2009, over 30 million, or less than 2 million in 2007, over 30 million in 2009. And we thought, what if we could pair social media, location-aware devices, smartphones, and essentially ask, what if a smartphone could save your life in a crisis? What if you could have a policeman in your pocket that said, hey user, I see you're in the area, this is what you need to do, where you need to go? What if you were on campus here at the University of Alberta and there was a gas leak in Quad? If you're in Quad, you want to know, hey, I need to get out of here and here are my possible evacuation routes. And if I'm coming to the university area, I need to know to avoid the area altogether. And that's where our logo was born. So I won't get to too much how our technology works, but what we essentially did was we created a user end and a back end. So for any user, we said your smartphone is your policeman, and your policeman will serve you and tell you where to go and what you need to do. But you need to trust the information that's coming to it. And so we created a back end for trusted authorities, whether they were emergency response or offices of emergency management. We said, here you can visualize your entire area, whether it's a city or a campus or a company, and you can select areas that you want to send messages to. You can do it by zip code, you can do it by outlining an area on a screen, you can do it by geography, by saying, for example, downtown Edmonton or university area. And then we gave them the ability to track different populations and say, you can send different messages to different populations. And for the user on their smartphone screen, they'll get up-to-date messages, they'll get maps of the area, they'll get filtered maps that show medical aid, safety, evacuation routes. They'll have offline libraries that show them first aid information, disaster kit information. And so here are just some screenshots of the user side that we created. Okay, and here's an close-up of the command side that we created. So again, you can see your area, in this case, New York City, and someone chose to outline the central part of the city and then place location landmarks around the city. For example, medical aid, shelters, and exit routes. So on the one hand, we did really, really well. We spoke with Google.org. We were named as Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Brilliant Companies of 2011. We spoke with the UN. We were invited to the White House. We were named a cool vendor of Gartner in 2011. But what does that all mean? And for anyone in the entrepreneurial space, you'll learn that hype and news and accolades are a dime a dozen. But unless you're helping people, unless you're making a difference, unless you're turning this into action, it doesn't mean anything. And so our pivotal moment came with what you see in the center here. City of Manor, Texas. Very small city, most of you will never have heard of it, small city of 8,000 people. But we did our research, and what we came to find was their CIO, their information officer, was extremely tech savvy and embraced new technologies. And when we said, hey, we have this brand new disaster response technology, then we think that would benefit you and your community. After enduring many maybes, oh, you know, we don't have the funding from many other communities, more prestigious, bigger, we finally had a yes. And in 2010, we successfully launched a 6-month pilot of our technology. And so the lesson I want you to take from this, we'll go into more of the lessons in a few minutes' time here, is that it's important to dare, and always dare. We managed to replicate this success again with Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy last year. And part of it came back to prototyping quickly and acting really rapidly. So when we heard that Hurricane Irene was going to sweep the East Coast in 2011, we talked to our developers on the other side of the world and we said, you guys have 7 hours. We want you to make an app that allows connected users to look up their area or their zip code of interest and let them know if they're in a hurricane evacuation zone or not, and if they need to evacuate. And so what you see here was me testing the app. 7 hours later, I was in California at the time, and it let me know that you're currently in California, you do not need to evacuate, which is good because it's true. Okay? So, why am I telling you all these stories? Partially to entertain you, partially to blow your mind, but partially to let you know that each and every one of you here has the capacity and potential to do something potentially game-changing. So here's what I've learned in observing the world around me and having to live through it. Number one, if you can dream it, you can do it. Nothing is impossible, and impossible is nothing. This came from Dean Kamen inventing the Segway, saying, you know, why can't we have something better than a scooter that's not quite a motorcycle or not quite a motorized vehicle? Or Dean Kamen again inventing the insulin pump, saying, you know, why can't we have controlled, programmed, automated insulin infusion? It came from someone saying, what if, you know, what if we could go to the moon? What if we could cure AIDS? What if we could cure cancer? Lesson number 2, question everything. Now this is something that, you know, a lot of parents will tell their kids, you know, why do you always have to ask why? But if you can have that uninhibited, unexpert mentality of a child and look at everything and say, why is the world the way it is? And how can I make it better? Now, for those of you who've seen me talk before, you know I tend to rant on about bottles and how unbelievably inefficient they are. It's what I call the Heinz ketchup bottle problem. And so my beef with bottles is that by their very nature of design, the product won't allow you to access the full volume of what's in it. And if you were to do the math and calculate the billions of bottles we use every single year, and to calculate the amount of residual liquid left in it, whether it's shampoo or ketchup or mustard or mayonnaise, the waste would be staggering. So I just complained about it. But a group at MIT, again at the Media Lab, did me one better and actually did something about it. And I'd like to take you through this video right now.
If there's a single, undeniable truth about life, it's that.
So here you have a typical ketchup bottle. So it's not bad. I mean, some of the ketchup comes out if you shake it hard enough, and some of it stays inside, which is potentially wasteful. Okay? What if you manufactured a brand new non-stick material? So a bunch of materials design experts got together and said, hey, wow, how do we make the ketchup bottle better? And you can apply this principle to anything, whether you're talking about bathrooms. So the other thing I tend to ramble on about is bathrooms, especially in public places. So my beef with bathrooms is that, and if you're a public health expert, you know the literature that, you know, depending on where you are in the world, you'll never ever get 100% of people washing their hands. At best, maybe you'll get 80%, 84%, and I think that was at Toronto Airport during the SARS crisis. But on average, it'll range at 48 to 64%. This is pretty disgusting, especially if you're a germaphobe like me. But what if you could circumvent the human behavior aspect of it and automate everything? So my challenge to you is next time you wander into a public bathroom, pay attention to what aspects of it are automated. Some might have automated taps, or automated soap dispensers, or automated hand dryers, or paper towel dispensers, or possibly toilets. But maybe 1% of every single bathroom you'll ever see or visit in your life will have all 5 or 6 elements automated. This doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, because you're essentially going to touch one part of a bathroom if everything is not automated. And the fact is that even if you're washing your hands after touching things, odds are at least 90%, or at least 1%, one person, the person who went to the bathroom before you did not. So my challenge to you coming out of this lecture is, what is wrong with the world around me? Not to make you a negative person, but say, do yourself one better and say, how do I make it better? How do I change the layout of a classroom so it's more conducive to learning? How do I change human traffic so it's less congested in hallways to when walking between classes? How do you build on the work of others? And so this goes back to a question of outlook. So the reason we have crises in life is not because we're doomed to fail, but because there's simply a problem that hasn't had a proper solution proposed to it yet. And so my favorite term from one of my favorite shows, The Simpsons, is called crisopportunities. There are no problems, there are only crisopportunities. There's something to be solved, it's just waiting for your brain to be put to it. So explore all ideas and avenues, generate tons of ideas, because somewhere in that haystack of physics-defying or impossible or cost-defying ideas is that one single needle, which is all you need to succeed in bringing about a successful revolution. Ask what if. And one thing I've added, if you've seen this talk before, is, but I'm too X, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm not trained in computer science, I'm not trained in medicine, I don't know how to do this. It's not my station in life to do this. And to you, I would ask you to YouTube the video of Jack and Draka. And we'll do that right now, actually. So Jack actually had the opportunity to meet him at a conference.
Okay, here you go. This is our moment you missed. He's not on the Golden Gate Bridge. Pancreatic cancer is one of the most difficult cancers to diagnose, but thanks to this 15-year-old boy, spotting it just got easier.
So rather than take you through the entire thing, I'll just let you watch his reaction, because it's pretty hilarious. He is, in fact, screaming, and in a couple seconds, you'll see him do the victory, touch the ground, scream again, grab one of the judges, and give her a big hug. So why is he so happy? Because he is 15 years old, and he has created a pancreatic cancer detection method that is 26,000 times cheaper than the current gold standard, hundreds of times faster and more accurate. And it didn't come from him necessarily waking up one day. It came from him being passionate about his idea. He had a close family friend that died of pancreatic cancer. He came with him saying, what if? Why is pancreatic cancer so lethal? It's because by the time it's detected, it is so aggressive and so malignant that it has already metastasized, and it's extremely lethal. And then he said, well, why can't we do one better? Why can't we just detect it earlier? And then he did the work. If you ever hear him do his talk, he's done TED Talks and he's talked at conferences. He said, what do I need to do to get to my end goal? He's gone through 4,000 papers. Then he came up with a proposal. He married ideas. He looked through what's been done. He learned about carbon nanotubules, and he said, why don't we use this technology to bind to antibodies, to bind to mesothelin, which is overexpressed by pancreatic cancer, and see if it's, and then detect pancreatic cancer that way. He made a budget, he made a timeline, he sent it out to over 200 renowned cancer researchers in the States. He got 199 rejections and one lukewarm maybe. He then went to the oncology researcher at Johns Hopkins and sat down with him and said, this is my plan. And this guy saying, well, you're 15 years old, what do you know? I'm going to bring in all the cancer experts at Johns Hopkins, and we're going to fire out questions at you. To hear him tell it, it was mildly terrifying. Then what he did was he buckled down for months, ran his trials, and only after that presented his results at the Intel Science Fair, Westinghouse Science Fair. And after putting in the work, said, I'm 15 years old, and I've beaten the gold standard for pancreatic cancer detection. My point is here that you can't be limited by, but I'm X years old, or I'm limited, or I'm only trained in this. So the other example I want to tell you about is the Brittany Banger. She's 17 years old, and she recently won the Google Science Fair. And she did that by creating a brand new, this will be interesting for those of you who have backgrounds in pathology. So when you're doing a biopsy of a potential breast mass, whether it's a cancer or a lump, you can do it by what we call FNA, which is fine needle aspiration, or by core biopsy. Core biopsy is far more accurate, but it's painful. It requires sedation. You can't really do it in the clinic because you're essentially sticking a huge chunk of something to remove a larger lump. FNA, you stick a needle into the mass. It's just like getting a needle for blood work. Stick out a liquid sample, but you're getting a thin sliver of cells, and they send it off to pathologists. So it's not nearly as accurate. What this girl did when she was 12 in grade 7, she heard about something called artificial intelligence. Rather than wait to be taught about it in university, she went home and bought herself a book on coding and programming, taught herself to code. She was fascinated by artificial intelligence and convinced herself of its future. What she then did in grade 12 with her science project was created a neural network that analyzed over 7 million samples and looked at different 10 different characteristics of cells in FNA, samples from breast cancer patients or breast cancer biopsies. By marrying this emerging technology of artificial intelligence with a problem of uncomfortable biopsy methods for detecting breast cancer, she created a program that that's stored in the cloud, allows medical experts to send their FNAs into this program, put in their characteristics, and so far it's proven to be 99.1% accurate. And she did this when she was 17. So never feel limited or intimidated or that you can't. And if you do, what I like to say is there's a reason that we aren't rocket surgeons. You don't need to be a rocket scientist and a brain surgeon. The reason that there's 7 billion people on this planet is for you to say, hey, this is where I need help. Turn to someone and say, what kind of team can I use to help me to overcome my hurdles? What problem do I have and who can help me? That's why we share ideas, that's why we have people, and that's why we work in teams. And you'll find often that the best interactions and the best innovations don't come from one single field or come from one single person studying a single ion channel, but come from the cross bridges between disciplines. It comes from that person saying, hey, this is what I've discovered about this particular characteristic. For example, using the example of Jack in Andrika and pancreatic cancer, he said, okay, pancreatic cancer is known to overexpress mesothelin. And then he looked at material science, which has come up with carbon nanotubules. And he said, okay, well, why not attach antibodies to this brand new material and see what they can do? So look at others, figure out how they can help you, figure out where your strengths and your weaknesses are, and then marry those with other people who can complement you, because you'll be amazed by what can be done in teams. So, the last thing I want to talk about is how do you even get into this mindset? We've talked already about asking what if, or daring to make things better. But there's amount of specific knowledge that needs to come into play as well. You need to become an expert, you need to be curious, you need to be hungry for this knowledge. And that's where trends and emerging technologies become extremely important. So it's just as important as having this mindset of anything is possible and I'm going to look for ways to make things better. You need to be aware of what's on the horizon already. Because you can say, all right, I'm going to invent something that will be able to answer all my questions no matter what I ask it. And then someone will say, well, why don't you go back to 1999 and tell the founders of Google, because I'm sure they'll want to know about it. In addition to this, I want you to challenge you to think exponentially. And what I mean by this is, look at how far we've come in the space of such a little time. So one of my obsessions these days is something called big data. And what I mean by this is the sheer amount of volume of data that we generate on a daily, minutely, secondly basis, and the velocity at which this is changing, and the variety in which this data comes. So data isn't just numbers, it's not just figures. Data can be anything from images to videos to changing weather problems. And then the exponentiality of this, or the exponential aspect of this, comes from looking at how much data we've generated in the past 2 years alone. Despite the billions of books that exist out there, 90% of the data that humans have created have come in the past 2 years. Look at the example of social media or even any kind of broadcast media. When you think about the radio, it took the radio decades to reach 50 million users. It took 38 years to reach 50 million users. It took Facebook only 2. Again, if you want to engage in an exponential thought experiment, ask yourself what would happen if you took 32 linear steps. You take to start at one end of the room, take 32 steps, and maybe you'll make it 2/3 of the way across the room. Now ask yourself what would happen if you took 32 exponential steps, by which I mean you would take 1 step, then 2 steps, then 4, then 8, then 16. You took 32 exponential steps, I can guarantee you would no longer be on this planet, assuming gravity was no longer a factor. So I want to narrow this down a little bit as we talk about our last lesson. Be aware of trends. This is a course on technology and the future of medicine. So I want to take these last few minutes to talk to you about trends, emerging trends in technology. So we've talked a little bit about big data, and I want to challenge you to apply this to medicine. When you apply the vast amounts of telemetry that patients are generating versus their overall health period versus data they generate during periods of well-being with the quantified self-movement. So you have things like the Fitbit or Nike telemetry monitoring, heart rate. When you monitor this and when you measure it with outside factors like weather patterns or seasonal patterns or precipitation or even holidays, what does that tell us about health? How does that enable us to change healthcare? So, for example, using a simplified example, let's look at Alaska. Highest rate of suicide and depression in the United States. Now, if you pair this data with something that you wouldn't normally think to, like hours of sunlight per year, you realize that compared to anywhere else in the United States, they have extremely, significantly lower exposure to sunlight and vitamin D. So then you might consider an intervention, say, okay, well, we're going to ensure that every single version of food X will have, be supplemented with vitamin D, like milk. And so that would be one application of big data. 3D printing we talked about at the beginning of this course, or at the beginning of this lecture. So what if we could print hearts or kidneys or skin? It's already being worked on today. What if we could go one further and 3D print medications? As 3D printing gets even more and more nanoscale, we have the potential to move to the level of nanomedicine and say, here's where deficits occur. They occur at the level of the cell. They occur within the cell, intracellularly. What deficits are we trying to fix, whether it's overexpression of mesothelin, whether it's DNA synthesis, repair issues, whether it's whether it's cells that have lost the ability to have programmed cell death. The other trend I want to talk about is artificial intelligence, and this ties back a little bit to production of data. There's no way a single human can parse through all these vast amounts of data that we're generating at every single second of every single day. So as the data grows, our ability to parse the data and utilize the data needs to grow. We need to apply filters, and we need to model with different, we need to pair with different methods of aggregating and sorting this data through different networks, through different algorithms. Two other trends I want to tell you about, which I'm not going to delve too much into, but have are widely used in the literature today, are faster, better, cheaper, smaller. So being a surgeon, this is something that interests me greatly, because I'll be one of the first to say that surgery is inherently barbaric, because what I'm doing to my patient causes them pain. Because if you don't happen to know me and you meet me at a party and say, what do you do? If I'm feeling a little bit cheeky, I'll say, well, I cut you, take your money, and at the end of the day, you'll thank me for it. It might hurt a little bit, but you'll feel better. If you've ever had surgery, you know it's not a pleasant experience. And you'll know that the advent of things like minimally invasive surgery, laparoscopic surgery, have better patient outcomes because they cause less tissue damage, less inflammation, and less pain. So how can we get to faster surgeries and that are less painful for the patient, that save money for the hospital? How can we ensure they're more accurate? Going away from surgery, how can we use nanomedicine, nanoparticles to apply to cellular deficits, to genetic conditions, to chromosome deletions, which in turn result in congenital abnormalities. And the last thing I want to tell you about is the trend that's well known in the United States called the 4 Ps. What that stands for is personalized, preventative, participatory, and predictive. And so this is a generic term. It doesn't apply to any one technology, but it's a vision of the way medicine should be. Because as much as we have evidence-based medicine, as much as we have clinical trials that span thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, when you look at all the data, the odds that all of these results are going to apply to one single person every single time are incredibly small. You need to take, the reason we still have doctors that haven't been replaced by robots or Watson's IBM is because at the end of the day, we need clinical judgment. We need to realize that each patient is different, each patient has different circumstances, and that's where the art and less of the science of medicine comes in. And so how do we personalize what's out there in the literature towards our patients? It's already being done a little bit today. For example, if you look at breast cancer patients and personalized chemotherapy, you look at the specific receptor that their particular tumor expresses, and that will predict whether they'll be responsive to a specific type of chemotherapy. Preventative measures. This is a huge topic that's all of a sudden coming to the forefront, and rightly so in recent years. I believe it was 2 years ago that Ottawa finally invested $67 million in healthcare prevention initiatives. If anyone, has anyone here ever heard the term, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure? It's really true, because for those of you who work in hospital setting, who have seen the amount of tubes and medications, the interventions that go into a patient once they're sick, especially with end of life, especially with chronic patients who've never taken their medicines, haven't exercised a day in their life, are non-compliant with their medications, overeat, and refuse to quit smoking, they're in rough shape. Whereas if you had taught them the importance of exercising regularly, eating their greens and their fruits and veggies, exercising minimum 30 minutes a day, and never ever picking up a cigarette, they'd be far better off for it at the end of their life. This is true of smokers as it is of diabetic patients when you teach them to manage their insulin early on. Preventative medicine is huge, and it's a trend that needs to be even more recognized in the world today. And I'm seeing someone nod, so at least I have one convert. The last two things I want to talk about are predictive and participatory medicine. So participatory medicine. There's this stigma of medicine that even persists today, and we see it in the clinic all the time, where people are perplexed when they come into the clinic that we're asking them so many questions. How long has your pain been there? When did it start? Is it on a scale of 1 to 10? How bad is it? Is it radiating? Is it sharp? Is it dull? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Are there any associated factors? And they're like, you're the doctor, you tell me. The fact of the matter is, I'm not the one that's in your head as a patient 24/7. You're in your head 365 days a year. And as such, you're the expert on you, and you're the one who can tell me what is going on with your body. And patients need to be empowered to realize that, and that they have a great amount of responsibility in their own health care, whether it's the medication compliance or even not becoming sick in the first place. And I think that's one of the trends that really needs to be capitalized on in the coming decade of medicine. Because there's this huge disconnect that I, as a patient, go to my doctor and say, give me a pill, make it better. Patients need to realize that we as doctors can only do so much. It's up to them. Even after a surgery, for something simple as an appendectomy, a surgeon can go in there, take out the appendix that's inflamed. The patient needs to comply and take their pain medications, take their antibiotics, and refuse to lift heavy medication, or sorry, refuse to lift heavy objects for the next 4 weeks, so they can in fact heal well without becoming infected, without pain, and without herniating. All right. And we're going to talk about, we've already talked a little bit about predictive medicine and big data and artificial intelligence and data mining. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. Okay? So we're nearing the end now. What I want you to take away from this is don't be afraid of thinking big, because nothing is impossible. What your challenge, I'm going to give you a homework assignment in a second to come back with next week. But your challenge is to say, what is the craziest idea I can think of? And why isn't it being done already today? Always seek to improve the world around you, because everything can be made better, whether it's starting on a small scale and helping someone who looks like they're having a rough day or in need of a little bit of food or shelter, or thinking of something on a big scale. There are no problems, there are only crisis opportunities. But I'm just X years old, or but I'm only this, but I'm only that, is just an excuse. Never ever estimate the power of other people and their ability to help you and be passionate and change the world with you, and stay ahead of trends and technologies. So, in the last minutes here, I want to ask you a question. Why innovate? You've heard me rant about bottles before. This will be the last time we bring up bottles.
This thing is going to change the way that people have nights. Solar bulbs is a cheap way of allowing light to go through your roof. By putting this on the roof, it goes through the bottle. The water serves as a thick lens, and it enters. And once water hits water, it refracts. So it goes 360 degrees. So it lights up a whole 35 square meter room in a very big way. That's 55 watts of free electricity. So what you save during the day, you can use for books, for school, transforming society as we know it. And if you can improve a life of a family, even in the smallest way, but make cumulatively many people be able to benefit from this, you change a whole new generation. They can read, there's better nutrition, and the same thing is you don't have to spend money where it's not necessarily. And that's the gift of the solar bulb.
So why innovate? Because there is a world of problems out there that are just waiting to be solved. In the video behind you, you saw someone who said that the Philippines are full of poverty. There are many people who live in the slums and live in darkness, even during the day because they cannot, or even at night because they cannot afford electricity. So what am I going to do about it? I'm going to take an empty Pepsi bottle, empty Coke bottle, fill it with water, fill it with bleach, drill a hole in the roof, seal around it so it won't leak, and provide as much light as a light bulb with, if not more. And in so doing, he solved the problem of electricity in impoverished areas. So why do we innovate? To make a difference. And in case you're short on challenges that need to be solved, I've left you with a little bit, some challenges that I would pose to you to think about as this lecture ends. In our lifetime, do you think it's possible that we'll cure cancer or AIDS, eradicate polio? I know we're close, but is that the end of it? Larry Brilliant, who is leading the initiative along with Bill Gates to eradicate polio, he has a great TED Talk on how he went about leading the initiative to eradicate smallpox. And it's no small task, but if you can eradicate smallpox, it gives us hope for other diseases. Can we end our reliance on fossil fuels and oil? Now, as I was preparing this talk, it was pretty close to it, so I didn't edit it any further, but I came across this 13-year-old little boy who managed to extract a new source of energy from trees, providing an alternate source. You look at solar, you look at wind, you look at biofuels. Yesterday I read an article about Japan finally having hope of overcoming their deficit after shutting down their nuclear reactors after the Fukushima disaster in 2011. They discovered through ocean exploration that there is vast amounts of what we call methane hydrates in the ice at the bottom of the ocean, under the seabed, around in their territory. And their challenge now, methane would be an amazing fuel source that would provide another fossil fuel. Now the challenge now is to safely extract it without releasing methane into the atmosphere, which is 10 times more potent than carbon dioxide at insulating the planet. Can we bring the bottom billion out of poverty? We have 7 billion people on the planet, but at least 1 billion of them live in abject poverty, and that's 1 billion brains that could be used to solve other problems. They just don't have the chance. How do we empower those people? How do we give them a chance to use the internet, to educate themselves, to build their communities? How do we provide universal care, health care to every man, woman, and child? Will we settle Mars in this lifetime? Can we not only reverse engineer the brain, can we augment ourselves? Can I give myself, by injecting, for example, stem cells or giving myself deep brain stimulation, can I augment my memory? Can I enhance my executive functioning? Or, one of my favorites, which a friend of mine in his startup posed, can we cure death, solve aging? These are the questions I'm going to leave you with. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what to experience next time. Be prepared to come to work. So this was my time to talk to you. Next time, it'll be your turn. It'll be a workshop. It'll be incredibly interactive. So don't come if you don't expect to work a little bit. We're going to learn about going from idea to reality. How do you turn an idea into something actionable? What are the first steps you have to take? It's a workshop. It's called Engineering Tomorrow, From Idea to Reality. It's all about teamwork, rapid prototyping. It's going to take place in next week's class, so next Tuesday, this time, this place. We'll be embracing big problem spaces, problems that will affect 10, 100,000, 1 million, 1 billion people. We'll be looking at trends and technologies that can help us. We'll talk a little bit about business Mad Libs. Okay. So this is your homework. It's in quotations because there is no grade for this, so I'm not going to enforce it. But it is something I think would be a good exercise. And if you feel like you want to change the world, maybe it's something that's worth indulging in. As you leave this classroom today, I'm challenging you to see the world through new eyes. Whether it's as simple as standing on a roadway, more safely on a street corner, don't stand in the road. Look at the road and admire it, and admire the amount of effort that it came to put this road in front of you on roads across Edmonton, across Alberta, across the nation, across the planet. And think about the human ingenuity that came as part of it. Think about the hardest possible problem you can imagine, and then try thinking about a solution. For one day, to help you in this, take a pad of paper with you, take a pencil. Everywhere you go, look for inefficiencies, whether it's ketchup bottles, whether it's congestion, traffic congestion problems. Ask yourself how you can make it better. And now in preparation for next week, Start thinking about grand challenges. And if you want to have a first step or a leg up, maybe start thinking about 3 challenges within your own field that you can solve, and think about who might be able to help you. So we're at time. So the parting advice I'm going to leave to you is an amalgam of people who have influenced me. So in the corner up there, you'll see George Bernard Shaw, Dean Kamen, Steve Jobs, Peter Diamandis of the X Prize, all amazing thinkers, all amazing doers. And what I've done is combine my favorite quotes from them. So remember to ask those fairy tale what-if questions. Stay hungry, stay foolish, because today's craziness might be tomorrow's breakthrough. When embarking upon an idea, ask yourself, is it crazy? The answer should be yes. If it works, will it be a really big deal? Look at the world and don't think why, but ask why not. After all, progress does not depend on the unquestioning individual, but the unreasonable one who dares to ask those crazy fairy tale what-if questions. Thank you guys so much for your attention. If you have any questions, here's my email address.
Thank you very much for another awesome session. I just wanted to point out that if you have friends or associates who would like to come next Tuesday, they are most welcome, but having people sit here and not take part can't happen. So if they come, they have to be part of the teams. And you have to all sit relatively close to each other so that the workshop works. Thank you again very much.
Thanks for having me.